Ontology versus psychology. I feel very fortunate, to have been somebody that in my early 20s got, you know, exposed to like a new way, a new paradigm of understanding the human experience, that a friend of mine, you know, brought me to this seminar, paid for it. It was also a seminar that was recommended to me by my sociology professor, Dr. McGrain at Chapman, because he would talk about it, this seminar that changed his life, that, made clear many things. And he would talk about divorcing his wife and how much pain and all this stuff, but that he had developed this amazing relationship with her. And he would share, and, it's very interesting because he talked a lot about Buddhist teachings and have us read books and things that were really fascinating. What's interesting is that the seminars from Landmark Education were actually, adopted from another type of training called EST, from Warner Earhart, seminars like, Earhart training seminars, and something very popular, I think maybe during the 70s and 80s, and then turned over to, I guess, perhaps the employees, the people that got trained to lead those seminars. And there's something very profound about the people that led the seminars that, after like 12 hours of standing in front of people, and they showed no signs of fatigue. And there were people that just couldn't be triggered, that they could deal with no matter who it was that came up to the microphone, and profoundly coach people. And you would see people have these revelations and breakthroughs right in front of you. And the way that the seminar worked is that you never had to really share or talk, but just being in the environment and watching people, and then being, presented with these things they called distinctions would, have you examine your own life in a particular way. Within that, and I went on to take more of the courses and found myself in a program they called the Introduction Leaders Program, which was like a 6-month leadership program that actually trained people on how to lead introductions to the seminars. Now, really wasn't my ambition to lead the seminars, but it was something where I was interested in the training, understanding that the pathway to the people that would train to be the leaders of the original Landmark Forum, this was part of the developmental program. It was very cheap, like $400 for 6 months. But coaching it was something I did as like a volunteer. And, I became very effective, even within the whole worldwide organization. Like, my effectiveness as a coach was probably the number one in the world, even to a point where some of the program leaders from other regions would be interested in the methodologies that I would use. Because for me, I wasn't interested really in the big picture of the organization, but more learning about how to interact with people in a profound way as to cause breakthroughs. And I would do all of my coaching in groups. And so all 3 of my people, I would talk to them all at the same time. And it was very direct, but very effective. And so I would just deal with their lives. They can bring me all their problems and whatever, and that would be the basis. And, it's really amazing to think that 20 years later, I'm someone that, in a way, produced another breakthrough for myself. That one of the limitations within these programs is they never dealt with narcissists. That narcissists even participate in those programs and linger around, because people that have these types of experiential transformations, would make presumptions about anybody that went through the program. That people that went through it would really see life in a completely new way, empowered, being a cause of their own experience. And it was something that transcended psychology, that really it was ontology. It was the study of being, and that ultimately psychology is very good at describing patterns of behavior and making a generalized correlation to environments of the past as something that would profoundly impact people. But the problem with psychology is that, in a way, it views the things that cause human suffering in the future as trauma. And so the truth of the matter is it isn't actually trauma at all that defines people. Many of the experiences that define the way somebody experiences themselves in the moment are not even based on trauma. Now, for the child, it could have been perceptually traumatic, but some of these experiences are seemingly harmless. And so when I coach people, for them, it's so fascinating because the way the coaching works is I developed a methodology myself. In fact, the end distinctions that I present within an hour or 2 hours would be at the conclusion of a 3-day seminar. I introduce people to empty and meaningless, to literally experiencing total nothingness, a disappearance of the voice in your mind. And I had to develop a methodology where, people that are ruminating, that we actually believe that when we're analyzing life and analyzing ourselves, we call that thinking. We think that we're problem solving without recognizing that that is actually a dissociation from just being present and aware, that your brain, your mind, with trillions of cells, is like a supercomputer of discernment that, absent the process of analyzing, figuring out, judging, evaluating, listening to people, and listening to the voice in your head tell you what they meant, finishing their sentences, thinking you understand people before they even open their mouth, is something that powerfully and profoundly affects our capacity to empathize with and relate to other human beings. And ultimately, for me, this has led me to really examine things like Christianity, because when I look now, I can see that there was an ontology present, that in a very real way, Jesus was not merely, what people believe today, but was somebody that had undergone a profound revelation, experiential transformation. And when he speaks about God, the Father, Holy Spirit, when he talks about, heaven and hell, talks about the tree of knowledge, these are very profound, pieces of wisdom that really speak to the realities of the human experience, that the truth of the matter is what really damned human beings was language. That we created words, and these words used to describe the world outside of ourselves, let us communicate, think in new ways and paradigms. But it also created some very profound ramifications, that human identity, notions of our own self, are integrated into animal fight or flight reactions, that the patterns of behavior that we could describe, the patterns of experiencing reality, are so integrated into the occurrence of reality that it's so seamless that people are all engaging the same three-dimensional reality outside of themselves in a very unique contextual phenomenon where we believe we understand the world. And the tree of knowledge is a really amazing piece of ontological wisdom, that if people actually were to understand exactly what the ramifications of the tree of knowledge were in terms of the loss of human innocence, and Adam and Eve being surrogates for just human beings. That when we ate from the tree of knowledge is when, we really created evil, if you will. That what people suffer with is the objectification of self, that we pulled ourselves out of being as children, pulled ourselves out of being, meaning children are walking around as little enlightened beings in a way because they're like animals in the sense that they don't have notions of self. They don't have thoughts of their brokenness, their deficiencies, their failure, their being inadequate for life. And so when Christianity speaks about God creating the devil and descending from heaven, they're really talking about the infinite expanse of the human imagination. That the human imagination is so powerful that absent language is a tool that we would almost exist as psychics in this reality, where you could use your imagination to picture a woolly mammoth and figure out how to trap it. You could reality test reality before even stepping out into the world. And then you can go out there and try it. And then you could fail, but you didn't go, I'm a failure. You would learn and go, okay, when I make this sound over here, it goes that way. When you do this over there, it goes that way. Or if I take an animal, I can put it here, and the saber-toothed tiger is going to come, and we can get it to fall in a trap. We can learn how to herd animals. We can cultivate. We can engage in agriculture. We can harness fire. We can invent tools. We can create from nothing. The capacity to create ideations from zero, to spontaneously generate knowledge, and then go out there and reality test it, is the primary mechanism of the expansion of an inner working world that would give us profound gifts and powers to navigate reality. That if there was any mechanism or means through which we would be described as being created in the likeness of God, it would be the infinite realm of creation within our imagination. That human beings created DNA. We imagine DNA as a molecule to explain the organizing principles of life before we could observe the molecule. Now, I'm not saying we created it and then it became something that existed in reality. However, what I'm saying is that we could imagine it by understanding the rules of the physiology and understanding biochemistry at a level that would have someone's mind organize those molecules in a way where they could see how information could be stored in this mechanism and then go later and discover what they thought was real. That somebody could sit under a tree and create the Pythagorean theorem. That somebody can disappear in an apartment and come out with calculus and physics. That we can look at a bird flying and then picture ourselves flying. That the limitlessness of the imagination in the human brain has people driving Formula One cars, has people breathing in outer space, has people splitting atoms and making heat greater than the core of the sun. And the challenge of human beings is that when we started to create an identity for ourselves, we existed as caricatures within the expansive realm of our own imagination, and those limitations inherent to the experience of a child who said for the first time that there's something wrong with me, that I'm broken, that I'm not good enough for my mommy, for my daddy. That these were normal psychological mechanisms that would help accelerate the development of children's minds by attaching to parents and attempting to appease them in a perpetual effort to rapidly develop. That it was a motivational instrument for developing people. And, we have solved the riddle of the human experience. Buddhists, Jesus, transformational people and people that would create things like these seminars. And the problem is that these spiritual awakening experiences, these enlightenment experiences have existed as mystical, spiritual, without really being integrated into the domain of commercialized psychology in a world where the same psychology is used as a vehicle of indoctrination. The basis of education is an effort to, in a way, sever children from their curiosity, to homogenize them in a particular way, to imbue them with competitiveness and a perpetual need for external validation based on their performance. And then it's a very insidious process that has resulted in, what we see today. People that don't resemble individuals with the capacity to think. That you can take a grown-ass man today, part of a species that prevailed so profoundly over nature, here we are, survived every ice age, survived in balance with nature and understood the rules of it. And now we have air conditioning, penicillin, and buy it now, and Google and Wikipedia, where people don't like to speak unless they have the ability to cite their sources, where we have a system of graduating people and certifying them. And what are they being trained in? They're being trained in the thoughts and ideas of others, where there's a separation from, people that are pioneers and at the genesis of knowledge, and those who are merely consumers of it. And a failure to recognize that there's a profound distinction, that we're all sort of standing on the shoulders of the people that, pioneer knowledge, that using their own imagination are at the forefront of the development of thoughts, ideas, philosophies. And then we demonize many of those people. Like, I have a buddy that's a cancer doctor, Dr. Poku. And he's pretty much maybe the leading authority on the planet in the field of nuclear medicine. And so when I hear people talk about conspiracy theories where, we don't want to cure cancer because the pharmaceutical industry's brainwashed modern medical science, and that we're getting away from Eastern, and it's all nonsense. It's hard for people to really conceptualize the existence of people that have such a vast level of intelligence that they could invent molecules in their mind, including all the chemical and biochemical pathways. That my friend runs a nuclear laboratory overseeing 50 medical and PhD students. And he's not a product of education. That his field of study is so limited that he's granted full autonomy. There is no person above him, that he's actually legally forbidden from having any supervisors, because the people that could supervise him don't have the ability to understand what he's doing anyway. He works at the City of Hope, and we're smart enough to know that we have to legislate ways to protect him. That federally and locally, he's legally forbidden from having supervision. That there is a purity to academia still. That there are people like him that are on the forefront of discovery, trying to solve very complicated, very challenging, very, very complicated, like to try to understand cancer, a genetic disease, mutations or changes in genome, or the expression that would create rogue cells that become pathogenic, destructive to the organism. In a world where people do not have the intelligence or the ability to even fathom the intimacy the details, of course, in a world where people are indoctrinated into fear and suspicion and propaganda and conspiracy, they would, want control. People can't contest that. People can't even articulate the level of intelligence. Like somebody that could probably test, 200 for his IQ. And a normal dude. The funniest part is he's a Christian. He's the most soft-spoken. He's almost wholly unaware of just how unique he is. You wouldn't even know. Drives a Honda Accord, dresses perfect, but he's like a chef. He's an extraordinary person. He's, in fact, somebody that was a savior of me, that I actually had to have a breakthrough to have him as a friend. That, I had to transform my relationship to women. That, I met him through a woman named Sarah McCaig, who I met in Newport, hitting on girls, partying with my narcissist friends. But when I kind of realized, that these people were very, unique intellectually, it's like I had this, epiphany about my relationship to women through her. The irony was that she dated one of my narc buddies, and he did something really inhuman. She walked in on him in his bedroom when we were all partying with another girl. She went running, crying. I saw her leave, crying. And realizing what happened, I chased her. I got in her car. I wouldn't let her leave. I told her, and I apologized for my friend, and I swore to her that I would be her friend for life, that I wanted her to trust me, that I was not like that. That this was just a friend for fun. But she was different. I could see it. And I earned her trust, and it was really amazing because I learned how to be a brother. That, for years, she kept a mattress at her apartment in Pasadena for me, and it was just propped up against the wall. And I would come over and bring ice cream, chamomile tea in a red box, and I would stay. We'd drink the tea and eat ice cream and watch movies. And sometimes we'd watch the funniest movies. I would get really weird ones. I got this really weird movie, which is Adrian Brody, and it was I don't know what he did. He created some kind of genetic hybrid, and he ended up having sex with it. It was really the weirdest shit. But we would laugh together, and just, it was actually a really amazing thing because she would have boyfriends, and there's so much integrity to the relationship where I was just a brother. That me sleeping there didn't mean anything. That it would actually give you security. And I learned that I could contextualize women any way I wanted. That I didn't have to lust. I didn't even have to objectify them anymore. It gave me freedom. I didn't even see her as a woman. It was just a friend. It was a person. And to this day, what I can see for myself is that I don't have to be a man or an American. I'm just a human being. That I can enjoy all these things that you think were masculine, but I don't think about masculinity. I don't think about gender roles. I don't think about gender identity. I don't think about any of that. I don't think about any of it at all. I just get to be me. And my recent experiences, brought me back to that place of nothing, that place of emptiness, where confronting this hidden monster of trying to be good enough for people, trying to prove myself. And that was right underneath my analysis, right underneath being analytical, right underneath trying to figure everything out. And in a way, I was talking to God. I wanted him to let me win. Let me prove myself first. I'll come back. I want to make a difference, but people won't listen. I need to win. I need to prove myself. And that broke me. broke me. In letting go of myself is what I did. I had to let go. I had to realize that a life lived for me trying to overcome all my afflictions, try to overcome my fear of failing, overcome my notions of my own brokenness and being quite not enough, was always going to result in my destruction. And even if I had the success, who cares? That I was never going to really exist if it was just a supercharger that people would know me for, or what I could do for their cars, or how much money I made, or what my body looked like, or my intelligence. But that was never who I was. And something happened when I let it go. That the exercises I give to people, that the conversations are me taking them on the same journey I went through, just manually. That you don't have to have your life destroyed to wake up. That I invented a way to do that. That I created a methodology for taking somebody from analyzing, explaining themselves, to putting them in a moment, to just saying, okay, let's go to, you got discarded, right? Let's just go sit there. No, stop explaining. Just tell me how it felt. What do you feel like? Where are you right now? Put me in a moment. Let's just go there. And the point wasn't to bring up their trauma or make them feel anything. It was to reintroduce them to the mind of experience, their visual mind. Put them in their memories. And then to sit them there. And then to show them we can zoom out. And when we zoom out, what do we see? This list of emotions that I just wrote. Broken, not good enough, failure. Something's wrong with me, not good enough. Loser. Hopeless, stuck, afraid, abandoned. Every single one of those emotional experiences. Oh, it was there in the relationship too. So it isn't because you got discarded. No, it was there already. Oh, it's also in your family. It's also at work. It was also at college. It's also with all your friends. It's also in high school. Wow. And then suddenly, what do you see? I'm 5 years old. I'm in the kitchen. My dad says this, that, and this. What did you make that mean about yourself? And then when I write everything, I flip the camera and they get to see it's the same list. Word for word. Feeling for feeling. That unbeknownst to them, that moment where they first said I'm broken, that moment where they said I'm not enough, where that moment they said there's something wrong with that moment, they said I'm abandoned, that moment they said I'm unlovable, that moment they said I have to figure it out. I've got to be strong, I've got to be perfect. If I'm perfect, then this wouldn't have happened. That I'll be lovable, I'll be enough. And that was the moment they created themselves. That was the moment where they lost their innocence. That was the moment where their happiness was replaced by anxiety. Their happiness was thrown into a someday future, contingent upon their perfection, contingent upon their game, contingent upon their results, contingent upon the thoughts and feelings of everyone other than themselves. And now we have a system that keeps you there, that as adults walking around abandoned, broken, not enough, where people want to understand their own suffering, go to school, learn psychology, want to try to fix people, where you can sit there and talk about your life, where you can talk about your childhood, where you can correlate your broken home, your education, to the person you are today. And psychology will tell you that you're damaged, will tell you that you're traumatized. And what you find is that while people have experienced trauma, the irony is that the trauma isn't even what's at the source of their experience. That some of these moments could have been traumatic, sure. But the only thing that's causing the suffering of any individual are their own thoughts of themselves. That if you didn't think you were broken, you didn't think you were not good enough, then when somebody says something to you to invalidate you, you would merely observe a fool because you knew who you were. But you don't have authorship over your own experience. Because when you objectified yourself in language, you created a fight or flight reaction that rather than being applied to a lion, tiger, or bear, was applied to you. That your fear is seeing yourself as not good enough in the eyes of another. Your fear is judgment. Your fear is disappointing. Your fear is not being enough. Your fear is failure. Your fear is measuring up to the standards and ideals of a modern man or woman. Or your fear of not being good enough for Jesus. And that's why we suffer. Because we build a Tower of Babel. That the whole endeavor of your self-discovery is built on a foundation of nonsense. That trying to fix what's wrong with you is what's wrong with you. Trying to prove that you're good enough is why you feel like you're not. That everything you do in servitude of these thoughts and notions is the perpetual validation of the notions themselves. You're acting on bad intel. And we have a world to cater to that. Where you will suffer because you will go out and try to figure out what's wrong with you. You read a book, you'll learn your new love language. You'll go sit with a psychologist who opens up a book and points at page 94 and says, "We've discovered what's wrong with you." Yeah. You have borderline personality disorder. And that's a lifelong struggle. We think you need to tell your romantic partners, and you're going to have to deal with coping. Yeah. And the truth is that someone with borderline is a people pleaser that had a malignant narc dad. And the perfectionism of that 5-year-old mind caused them to continually adjust to perfection is the only way to avoid devaluation and turn their daddy into a perfect father. Then the splitting is merely the accumulation of all the devaluation that never gets mitigated or spoken. Quite simple. And I can talk to that borderline. Within an hour, there's no idealization. I can watch them release the anger. And I can see them experience the nothingness. Literally watch the voice turn off. I can watch them have peace of mind for the first time. I can talk to somebody that's 59 years old, 20 years of therapy, discover that they were never broken. I can go and pull out the notes I can show you that I have the same conversation. I don't need to know where you're from, what you do for a living, what you believe. All I need to know is the truth of what you experience in your darkest moments, and then just show you that you've been repeating that. And that's why you have no discernment. That's why you can't tell the difference between a soulmate and somebody that they would call demonic. It's why I couldn't. If you're going to feel not good enough because the false self of a narcissist is being a victim, well, you're going to make some mistakes. If you're going to make your life about what's wrong with you, if you're going to think that your purpose is to get all your ducks in a row, to get that $500,000 mortgage, to demonstrate your viability as a woman or a man, if you think you're going to find happiness by clicking buy it now, you're just participating in one big social experiment that we are at the tail end of. And humanity's either going to accept that there is another level of experience available, and available rapidly. That I could live stream here, do the exercises on the whiteboard, and anybody that does the exercise will discover who they really are. That you are nothing but the experience of being. You are nothing but the experience. You are the observer. And you're listening to a voice in your head as the narrator of reality. The voice that severs you from discernment. That has you believe you already understand tomorrow. That as you think that you know who's in front of you, that takes what you've already been through, projects it onto someone new so you can survive it. And you react like an animal to the mere facial expressions and tone of voice. You're searching for, am I good enough? Am I safe? Is this person like me? Am I lovable? While you're smiling, pretending that's not what you're doing. And it makes no mysteries why people who try to heal and feel so isolated, so alone, so disconnected have to find a community. That you have to rediscover your empathy and compassion and love for yourself in a world where people tell you got to love yourself first, and you can't. How could you create and manifest love for yourself without first addressing the inauthentic beingness of somebody who conceptualizes themselves as broken, traumatized, afflicted, where everybody thinks that they are uniquely damaged and hides that from everybody else, failing to recognize the fear and anxiety that they carry and hide. Everyone else has it. And by everyone else, I mean everyone. Where you think that people are more aware, more enlightened if they're more effective, failing to recognize that, well, the patterns of their stuckness just may be more effective. Maybe their not good enough was in relationship to their homework, whereas yours was in relationship to a narcissistic parent. And so you're just programmed to survive devaluation, to persistently cast yourself as the villain in the victim story of a narcissist, that you will always sit here and be a perpetual walking guilt trip. That you will wonder what's wrong with me when someone cheats on you. What did I do wrong? Where you will validate emotional abuse, where you will listen to the excuses, the stories, the confabulations as a way to experience power in a world you have none. where you can't control the behavior of other people. Just like you couldn't control your parents, you imbued yourself with thoughts that would falsely empower you, thinking, if I fix myself, then people won't hurt me. If I could just be enough. And you think it's real because you feel it. But your reality testing is an emotional process where even when it isn't your fault, you're not responsible. If somebody can create you to feel guilty and bring up something about yourself, then you will let them off the hook. They're not perfect, you're not perfect. And you will do that and do that and do that. And then marvel at the aftermath. And then looking at the failure, say, see, I am broken. See, I am not good enough. Only a not good enough person would date a narcissist again. Even with all the things I've been through in my past, how would I not know? And you want more knowledge. Knowledge in response to the same voice that sabotaged you is the same one that has you fixing yourself. And now we've got a book this thick, full of stigmas, where we actually are convinced that it's a chemical imbalance of your brain, a hereditary anomaly. Somehow human beings, over the course of a few generations, have had the whole genome altered, where people just don't have enough dopamine, don't have enough serotonin, where somebody will look at you and say, you should be happy. Why aren't you happy? Unemployment is low. You could have anything you want. Self-determination. Look at this land of opportunity in a world where people are blowing themselves up. And you're supposed to be happy. And happiness is the purpose, the pursuit of happiness. I don't care about happiness. I don't need it. I'd rather have peace. I'd rather have all of my faculties available for other people. I'd rather experience the other people than worry about myself. That I'm done. I'm done. What else is there for me? That I could see the truth of myself. I could understand in vivid detail how I came to be. I could take anybody into any moment of my life and I can tell them exactly what I thought, exactly what I felt, exactly what I asserted, exactly what I believed, exactly why I did what I did. That I can go into any moment and I could see the smallness of my own mind. I can say, wow. And I can tell you that the subconscious that we talk about in psychology, I don't like the word subconscious. I would call it supraconscious. I would call it above, bigger. And that the things that we think run in the background of the subconscious is actually the true essence of you. That you're like your own little guardian angel, protecting yourself from pain, dissociating yourself so that you can delay the acquisition of truth, so that you don't have to see the betrayals, you don't have to see the deception, you don't have to see that this person hates you, that it is everything that you are that they hate, that those people don't have the ability to create love, they don't have the ability to use their imagination to picture a world that works, they don't have the capacity to think on behalf of others, to empathize. And when you bring that to them, you violate their false reality, you violate their victimhood, you steal their thunder, that you take away their godlike prowess and the genesis of their own false reality, merely meant to protect the infant that they are. A person stuck in perpetual emotional impermanence with no identity. that will just exploit you for their own capacity to experience their own existence, dependent upon your emotional reactions to generate their own emotional experience, to give them beingness. That absent your narcissistic supply, they fall out of being, that they don't know how to be. They have the emotional permanence of an infant, playing peekaboo, trying to maintain themselves in some grandiose state to protect themselves from anything that would cause an emotion to attempt to arise out of a perpetually dysregulated emotional core. The same truth that would set you free would be the truth that you're not broken, the truth that they are broken, that you trade places with the narcissist, that you absorb their guilt and their shame. That's the irony. You try to bring them up, and they can't go with you. They're immovable. There's no intervention. There's no saving. There's no fixing people. There's no changing people. You can't fix or change a person. I can't. I can't fix or change myself. But I can realize that there's nothing to fix or change. That the only thing I can do is reveal the true nature of reality outside of myself. That the transformation of a human being is merely a process of altering the occurrence of reality outside of them. That people work within a reality that gives them being, that seems to necessitate the existence of themselves as they are currently configured. That the only reason for me asking people about what they think or what they feel is to understand the architecture of the world that they've created for themselves. A world that says they're broken, they're small, they're helpless, they're unlovable, they're stuck, they're powerless. And that their only answer would be to improve, to get better, to understand. And understanding is just an abomination, that if you wanted to understand, then you would just observe. You just see what's going on. You would just look and tell the truth about what kind of person does that. Take away yourself out of the equation. What kind of man or woman acts that way? Is that love? Is that kindness? Is that truth? Is that responsible? Is that accountable? Is that kind? Is that respectable? Is that admirable? What is it you love so much about that person? Just how they make you feel? How you feel about yourself? Well, that couldn't be it. Maybe it's how you felt at a certain point. You're trying to restore yourself to feeling good. And that's what they're doing. Your transactional relationship with a narcissist is merely just an effort to fix yourself. The same effort that you've been engaging within since you were 5 years old. Feeling abandoned at 30, 40, 50. Unlovable. Wrong. Cursed. Afflicted. Traumatized. And we act on that. And it's not real. It's not true. Was it true at 5? It's not true today. I can only explain the experience of a person based on those thoughts. That's why it repeats. That the choices and decisions you make guided by those thoughts causes the same types of perpetual outcomes that reaffirms those thoughts. That you try to be perfect and fail, you feel not good enough. You try to be perfect and win, you feel good enough. You validate having been that way, or you confirm the need to be that way when you fail. And then as you stockpile memories, you can look back at your life and confirm this is who I am, and argue for the preservation of your victim, and argue for your stuckness, argue for your affliction. Ultimately afraid. Afraid of the unknown. What if none of that was real? What if it was made up? What if everything you think you understand about yourself was make-believe? What if you were never broken? What if it's not true that you're traumatized? Where can we find the damage? Are your neurons scarred? Does your brain have a real wound? Should it be normal and natural for adults to carry around the emotional structures of children? For human adults with cell phones, cars, shelter, to live as abandoned children? You just need to talk about it every week. No. So the world of ontology is what's at the very genesis of the individual human experience. And it gives rise to what we could describe as psychology, but psychology does not give access, prevents it. You stigmatize somebody with the diagnosis and you grant certainty and righteousness to the very underlying inauthentic thoughts, and look at the outcome. Look at our world. This is the best we can do with psychology, sociology, history. Repeat it. Watch the books get thicker. Watch new medications come out. New nonsensical modalities. Got people talking about eye movements. Eye movements for therapy. Just talking. Talking to feel better. I mean, that's just normal communication. Somebody needs a PhD to listen and try not to judge. It's very strange that your degree would be a certification in the thoughts and ideas of people other than you. Wow. So that's, the world I live in, where someone like me would be unqualified. Failing to see that there's people that created all the philosophies of psychology, independent of education. Well, the same system would tell you I'm broken. I've got a learning disability. My imagination was in the way. Had trouble with the flashcards. it would take me 40 some years to figure that out. That maybe I wasn't broken. Maybe that was a gift. Maybe having the ability to think, visualize, and imagine in such a way that I could use it as a tool to invent ways of addressing the experiences of other people outside the boundaries of psychology was a better way. And I'm glad I don't have a degree. I'm glad that I wouldn't be certain about the permanence of your afflictions and relegated to talk to you to figure out what page of the book I need to turn to. When the truth is that every dimension of your psychology could disappear in one talk. And that we've known this. That we've had the answers to the human condition all along. We've had the salvation. We've had it for thousands of years. We've had even cultures where these people had it. Well, we got rid of a lot of them. Colonialism and the propagation of indoctrinated beliefs, we could call Native Americans heathens. People that would pray over something they killed. People that would use every aspect of a bison and have compassion and operate within the natural order, that would have elders with wisdom, that would raise people in communities where they loved each other like brothers and sisters. They didn't necessarily have these afflictions, or they didn't leave children in boxes with narcissists and then put them in school and wonder, where did these serial killers come from? Why are people shooting up schools? Where are all these trolls online? Why do men hate women suddenly? Why are people blowing themselves up? Why are people fighting over dirt? Why are people arguing over their entitlement to special places? Why would we think we could justify blowing up hospitals? Trying to politicize homicide, like that you can send somebody to prison for life, yet you can elect somebody that can give an order, and destroy a whole country and kill millions of people and say, well, we thought they were weapons, that they interfered with our interests, that, gosh, it's important. Our economy depends upon this. You enjoy your prosperity, don't you? That your freedom is based upon these activities and actions, and so you're responsible too. You voted for these people. And I live in a world where it appears like everyday people are hostages. Where it's like, I'm supposed to believe I should have a problem with someone based on what they believe, or the country and history, and we're talking about the Holocaust and, what happened to one group as a way to justify what they're doing to another group, or we can't account for, How did we get here? How is it that this continent that was, populated by people is now one big cash register where to exist at all, you gotta work, and you gotta pay, gotta write a check to Bank of America every month. You miss for 3 months, you're lazy. Where the system's breaking people. Where, look at people, just minds fractured. And we just don't care. Or if a foreclosure sign went up, well, Dave was a really good guy. I don't know what happened. Yeah, oh well. That's our community. My neighbors don't know me. They would call the police if I worked on cars, like. It's like, what's going on here? And all these things we're so preoccupied with failing to recognize that we've got some systemic challenges, like political systems just in ruin, just because of the psychopathies of the people we put in them. That I would be told by this society that I am not qualified to talk about human beings or help them address their concerns. Yet half of those people would vote for a malignant narcissist and think that it's wise to give them control of our military. While he's sitting talking to a sociopath like a Putin, trying to appease him, coming back and saying he trusts this guy over our own intelligence apparatus. Wow. Wow. That's our level of discernment. So there's got to be a revolution, but the revolution isn't going to be violent. It's just be one of wisdom and adulthood. That we have to understand our world. And that's inconvenient. It's unpleasant. People don't want that. I've got 4 people listening to me. 4. That tells me our appetite for the truth. Now, people want to scroll and they want to see women doing the splits. They want to watch somebody pretend to be an artificial intelligence. They want entertainment. They want distraction. They want victimhood. They want a scapegoat. They just want it to go back to normal. But it can't. Like 2008 was sort of a little bit of a warning, reaching the end of a credit-based capitalist system of enslavement, where you're just feeding money to people to spend it, to assert their identity. And, it just reached the breaking point. now we're seeing the breaking point of 100 years of propaganda, 100 years of a particular mechanism to education. The age of the focus group. The age of planned obsolescence, the age of the pill, the age of identity. People being raised so they could be guided to make voting decisions. It's so we can operate within the boundaries of our system. Legally, technically, people are voting for these people, sure. But how can you talk about freedom without recognizing the lack of freedom? And I'm not talking about the freedom to buy things or the freedom to travel or the freedom to own and operate businesses or to choose a career path. I'm talking about the freedom to think. I'm talking about, the thought that people seem to have profound challenges when it comes to even ascertaining what's real. And that's problematic. It's problematic that we think it's the MAGA people ruining America. We're fighting. They're just the investment. They're the product. That's the outcome intended. And look at the people, the Bannons and the people that make money, the Zuckerbergs, the people that grant access to those interested in influence and control. That we just created a new form of slavery, the slavery of identity. The slavery of validation, the slavery of perpetual healing, the slavery of perpetual fixing of oneself, the slavery of not feeling like you're enough, not feeling like you understand, not feeling like you're informed, not feeling like you have what it takes, not feeling like you have enough information to deduce any conclusions, where the capacity to think is profoundly eroded. How is that even possible? See, to live in this world and kind of see that everybody's suffering from the same afflictions. You're just raising children in it and teaching them history, teaching them their entitlement to this piece of dirt, teaching them what their God thinks about the other people, without encountering the inhumanity of it, without really being responsible for it, without saying, there's something wrong with that, something inhuman about it. Where's the responsibility for that? That we made the school shooter here, that's the result. The incel, that's the result. The misogynistic, entitled man is the result. The nationalistic fanatic, that's the result. The Christian evangelical that hates homosexuals, that's the result. The people that assert entitlement to tell women what to do with their body, that's the result. The white versus black, that's the result. You know, and they don't really care, you know, that the issues of our day are manufactured. You know, that people arguing about abortion, well, you know, while you're doing that, they're moving aircraft carriers around. You know, they're, you know, doing whatever they want with impunity as we fight about the issues generated within the think tanks. That you think that these are important things. And it's not. It's a distraction. It's nonsense. We're arguing about the same things. Racism. Racism was an invention, you know, to create intentional class separations to turn people against each other for the convenience. And these people don't care about the things that they say they care about. You think Ron DeSantis really cares about any of the issues? No. You think Donald Trump cares about any of the issues? No. There's no concern. They don't have any authentic interest in any of the things that are discussed. That those are just convenient rallying of people, that having people divided within a system of parties of political affiliation is part of the overall maintenance of perpetual distraction, you know, where we dehumanize each other and police each other, doing the work, the powers that be, amongst ourselves. We're arguing across these artificial divisions where people's worldviews can be attributed to the preferred news networks or websites or sources of information, and there's no discernment. And that's why you see conspiracy theories, you know, because it just shows the ease of the system where people are just ready for that. Meaning, you know, I could have a friend watch a YouTube video, an hour later, the earth is flat. They could watch another video, and this public official is working with Bill Gates to put microchips, like, to population control you with a vaccine. Like, it's insanity. You know, that the whole thing is a problem. And it has to be accounted for academically. It has to be addressed. We have to be very interested in childhood development. We have to be interested in education reform to just take on a more Socratic perspective of teaching people how to think. Because that's going to be how we problem solve. That ultimately, rather than being angry victims, we could look at the structures of societies and just say, look, let's just be accountable. Let's just be responsible. Let's just ensure that when we make decisions, we consider the collective good and we consider the actual outcomes. That if somebody doesn't have the wherewithal, the integrity, the creativity, the thoughtfulness, the intelligence to picture how to resolve conflict without destruction or death, you know, then they just don't have what it takes. It's that simple. Then how are you going to negotiate a peace deal with people with, feather triggers, like how could you do that? Like, we're not talking about people that are compelled based on their humanitarian aspirations. We're not talking about people noted for their thoughtfulness, for their character, for their integrity. We're not talking about people that are noted for their capacity to visualize workability, cooperation, collaboration, unity. We're not talking about people that have any vested interest in the preservation of mankind. It's just not going to be an outcome of promoting narcissistic, sociopathic, malignant, and Machiavellian mentalities. And then we're not going to fight fire with fire. We're not going to win the information war without addressing the manner in which people become segregated, divided, without addressing the manner in which human beings are developed, without being able to articulate what's at the source of suffering. If we can't do that, then we won't have any power in addressing the human condition. If we don't really understand why people are really the way that they are, if we can only retroactively continue to describe, if our academics can only document our current problems to be inherited by the youth that are themselves inheriting the ignorance of their forefathers, then why would we expect it to work? If you're going to educate children in Israel, what are you teaching them about Palestinians and vice versa? If it was me, I would teach them about the ice cream gods. I would say Jerusalem is the headquarters of Ben & Jerry's. And your job is to pick ice cream for the children that look a little different. And if you bring them the ice cream and they are happy, then you'll go to ice cream heaven. If you're going to create an invisible man in the sky, then let's stop talking about hell. Let's stop talking about sinners. Let's stop projecting enemies. Let's stop talking about whose God is real and whose isn't, when we don't know what we're talking about anyway. That no idea. We don't need to. Then why not just have it be an open-ended inquiry? Why would talking about the nature of God be such a threatening thing? Why would that not be fun and collaborative and intellectual and exciting? Why wouldn't it be an ongoing, open-ended frontier of discovery? Why would it have to include righteousness, entitlement, hate? Why would it need to demonize? Why would it need to scapegoat? Why would it need to blame? Why would it need to reference history? Why would it need to entitle you as chosen or more special than another group? Why would it need to segregate on the basis of geography or color? What would compel you to imagine that some profound and all-loving deity have misogynistic or bigoted thoughts or hatred or be punitive? Why couldn't we just accept responsibility for the catastrophes of our own actions and thoughts? That falling short is what we are doing. That within our efforts to understand the nature of God and existence, we've fallen short. That we will always fall short. But it's only because of our election to believe, our desire for dogma and certainty, for rigid assertions of understanding things that we don't understand, knowing things that are unknowable, and turning God into another Santa Claus, an Easter Bunny, depicting them as a disapproving, malignant father figure. Well, it makes sense that we would have to do that to enable the feebleness of the average person to conceptualize something that would be a convenience for control. And so for me, a person's beliefs are irrelevant. I don't care what they believe, because their beliefs don't seem to make any difference. Their beliefs seem to be part of the continuation of the very sufferings that perhaps the teachings were meant to mitigate. That these prophets were not attempting to deliver a message of stuckness, fear, indoctrination, hell, pain, suffering, righteousness, entitlement, persecution, divisions. That what people are embodying today, it's got nothing to do with God. And I don't care how much they yell or scream or defend or point at a book or quote passages, completely incapable of making any sense of it in a way that's rational. And people thinking that they're fighting against science and failing to recognize that the very evil that they believe exists somewhere out there is what's speaking for them when they want to point the fingers and talk about who's a sinner. So I look at that. It sure makes working on cars a little more difficult. So we're down to one person. That's the appetite. And that's sad. Unfortunate.